Hey there, welcome to Women's World. I am Marcy. I'm a New York-based knitter and sewist, and on this channel I just talk about all the projects that I'm making, and today I have a bunch to share, both knitting and sewing, works in progress, and finished objects. And I also have gotten out of a little bit of a reading slump, so at the end I'm just gonna go through some of the audiobooks that I've listened to lately that have kind of gotten me out of that slump. But before we get there, let's talk about the sweater that I am wearing. This is one of my most favorite projects that I've ever done, probably one of my most worn finished objects as well. This is the Donna sweater by Josée Paquin, and it is a striped sweater that I used a gradient set to do the stripes instead of solid stripes like is in the pattern. I used a Prism yarns gradient set here, and then I used a contrasting color from Northwood fibers for the sleeves. And I love the way this sweater turned out, and it is just one of my favorites. I knit this ages ago, but I love wearing it, so I just wanted to share it with you as well. Everything that I talk about here on this video can be found in the description box below. I usually provide pattern names, yarn, and fabric information, as well as links to my Ravelry project pages, which if I've made a modification to a pattern, I will usually leave notes there on what I did. So I have a whole bunch of projects to share. As we come into spring here in the Northeast, I am so happy with my current works in progress, and I'm really excited for all the things that I have on my making queue going forward. And I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that I've been planning my projects even more than I have in previous years. I've been making mood boards, and I've been making little like pattern collections for myself and really executing those plans. So I'm really excited about everything that I'm working on. Let's start with my works in progress. My most recent cast on is a project that I have been dreaming about for like 6 months now. I bought the yarn back in like September or October, I think, and I just knew that I was going to be making it for spring 2026, and it was the first pattern to show up on my spring summer mood board for this year. And it is, oh, I just love the way it's turning out. It is the Geddy Tee by Tanis Lavely, or she's Tanis Fiber Arts on Instagram. And it is a boxy V-neck tee with a split hem, and the star of the pattern are the crochet granny squares at the shoulder. You end up doing the granny squares first, pick up at the shoulder for the top, you knit the V-neck and the back separately, connect in the round for the body, and then split again at the hem for a split hem. And I just love the way mine is turning out so far. For the main body of the sweater, I am using Miss Babs in the Yowza DK weight base, and it is in the colorway denim. I got this at Rhinebeck last year, as well as the yarn for the minis. So this is my main colorway, and then for the shoulders, I ended up getting some really bright fingering weight mini skeins from Fiber MacGyver. It was a like 10 skein mini skein set that I got in Rhinebeck, and I chose 5 of my brightest favorite colors to make these squares out of. And so let me show you where I am. I'm doing a slight sort of construction modification. I won't call it a pattern modification. I think the pattern has you start at the back by picking up along the long edge of your squares, casting on some stitches, and then picking up on the other side and starting across the back. I actually prefer to start the front first, so that is what I've done here. I've done one shoulder and some V-neck increases and short row shaping for the shoulder, and then my next step would be to do the same on the other side, and then I will connect the two for the back. A little bit of a different modification there, but that's just how I prefer to do it. And another slight modification is the way I've connected the granny squares. So in the pattern, Tanis says that she picks up stitches along the crocheted edge to start knitting, and she only does it through one loop of the crocheted stitches, the crocheted V's that you have here on the edge. So she only does it through one loop, which I love because you get this really nice clean line there, and only get better once I block this. So I decided that I wanted kind of a similar effect for joining the granny squares. So rather than use a mattress stitch and kind of smushing the granny squares together, I've done something called the back loop slip stitch join here, and I will include the tutorial that I used in my Ravelry project page, as well as in the description box. It was a join that I have not done before, but it was very easy to do. And it really creates this nice little separation so that you could see that these are individual squares and the finish is very similar to what you have there at the pickup stitch line. And yeah, so I am super happy with how this is coming out. I love that this is going to be a really bright pop at the shoulder against this really neutral kind of navy blue. And I put a lot of thought into the colors that I picked for this, and I didn't do like multiple colors. I just did all 4 squares being the same because I just really wanted a nice like cohesive pop at the shoulders. I originally had a pastel color palette. This is a top that I was planning for spring and I wanted to have a very spring vibe to it. So I originally had something that was much more subdued for the shoulder. But when I put those skeins together, I took a picture of it, I reduced the saturation all the way so that it was basically in black and white, and I could see that there was not enough contrast between the colors for the granny squares. And when you do that, the granny square can definitely look like washed out. Like for example, you can see here in the middle that there is very little contrast between the center and the next colorway here. And so if I had done the pastel color palette that I was originally planning, that's what would have happened. It would have been kind of like washed out like you see here. Instead, I chose to add in this contrasting red, which contrasts really nicely with the violet. It contrasts really nicely with the coral. And then I chose a kind of mild contrast, but still contrasting definitely between the coral and the light blue. And then it provides a really stark contrast with the main color. So yeah, and I was using mini skeins for this. Like I said, the pattern is a DK weight pattern, so I'm using DK weight for the main body, but here I used 20 gram, 80 yard mini skeins, and I ended up just holding a fingering weight, and I just ended up holding 2 strands of the fingering weight together with a 3.75 millimeter or size F maybe hook, and I ended up getting my perfect gauge on these squares. I was a little bit worried that I wouldn't have enough yarn in the minis to get the last colorway, the blue, on all 4 of the squares and then join it. But I ended up having plenty of yarn, I think for this last colorway here. So for a 80 yard skein, I used 64 yards. It was a 20 gram skein and I used 16 grams. So it just was perfectly enough. The smaller sizes in the pattern, you do 2 granny squares at the shoulder, or 4, 2 for each shoulder. I think for the larger sizes, you have to do 3 granny squares, so you might not be able to get away with using just a mini skein, but for the 2 squares at each shoulder, it is perfectly enough, and I am super motivated to finish this. I think it's gonna look awesome, and I really wanna finish this by the end of April because I want to be able to wear it in May and June when it's not totally hot here. I tend to have issues with having solid wool like next to my skin when it gets warm. So I definitely want to finish this way in advance of June before it starts to get hot here. So I'm super motivated to finish this, and hopefully it will be in my finished objects on the next video. The next one that I have to share is the Sunday sweater by Petite Knit, and it is a top down in the yoke sweater, or in the round sweater with yoke increases, and it has some short row shaping at the back. It has a folded over collar, and then it has 2 options for the sleeve, either a puff sleeve or a straight sleeve. I have chosen puff sleeves for mine, and this is where I am with it. For the yarn, I am using mystery yarn. I actually do not know what the content is. I got it like 2 or 3 years ago at Rhinebeck in a bargain bin for like $5 a skein or something like that. So really all I know about it is that it's black, and that when you wrap it around your whips per inch gauge, it says it's like a light fingering weight. Pretty much all I know. I suspect that it is wool from the way it is knitting up. And I'm holding that together with a strand of mohair because this is the Sunday sweater mohair edition. So I'm holding it with mohair, and I do know about that yarn. It is Knitting for Olive's soft silk mohair in the colorway Licorice. So it is knitting up fine, and based on my swatch, there was gonna be no problem using a mystery yarn together with the Knitting for Olive, and I think it's turning out great. I was really apprehensive at first to knit with black yarn. I had knit socks before in black, and I just found the toe increases and like the heel turn to be so torturous knitting with black, but it actually has turned out okay. I used some markers when doing the short rows so that I could see where my little double stitch was in my, I think, German short rows. But other than that, I've had no problems. I have not had to use a neck light. I wear my glasses, as I do with almost every project anyway. So it's been really fun to knit with, and I just love the way it's coming out. It's really hard to see on camera here, the ribbed detail at the yoke, but it's turning out perfectly when you look at it with the naked eye. I knew when I was knitting, when I was like planning on knitting a black sweater, that I wanted some sort of texture to it. I thought just a plain black and white stockinette sweater would be just a little bit meh to knit, but I didn't want so much texture that you wouldn't be able to see it in black. So I was going through my pattern queue on Ravelry and I came across the Sunday sweater, and I love the feature in Ravelry where you can look through other people's projects. There are plenty of projects that were knit in black, and I knew that the ribbed yoke, when you look at it with the naked eye, would be perfectly visible, and it's really a very nice little pattern to it. I'm almost done with it. I actually have to give it a little try on to see where I want the hem to stop. I started this in like November, I think. I put it on hold for December because I was just too busy with other projects, and I really picked it up again in January. I think the last time I showed this here on this channel, I was done with the yoke increases and I had separated for the sleeves. And so what I did was I knit the sleeves first before continuing on with the body. It's something that I've been doing lately with my sweaters, and I find there's less anxiety around like sleeve island when I get the sleeves over and done with. So I finished the sleeves, and now I just have, you know, X amount of inches for the body. It's, you know, I know the pattern has a specific amount, but I am going to try this on and see if I want to modify it, maybe make it slightly more cropped than the pattern has, or maybe I'll just go all the way down and make it a full-length sweater. I have not decided yet, but this will definitely, most certainly be a finished object by the time I record again. And the last work in progress that I've been kind of working on pretty religiously is a little sock. I said in my 2026 goals video that I wanted to knit more socks. I barely knit any last year. I think I only knit like one pair. So I have cast it on a sock, and it's actually been really great whenever I don't feel like working on one of my bigger projects, or I just need something small to carry around with me. This has come with me to a few events so far this year. It's been so great to have a sock. I'm glad that I decided to do that again. There is no specific pattern for this. I think I've talked about this here before. I am pretty proficient at knitting socks. I've been knitting socks for a really long time. So I just have my very own basic toe-up sock recipe that I like to do. And the great thing about a recipe is that if you knit in a stitch pattern that has a stitch count of 4, you can pretty much modify the basic pattern to be anything that you want. So I have modified my stockinette basic sock pattern, and I've just done a little 3x1 rib here, 3 knits and 1 purl, and that is how it's turning out. I will put the basic sock pattern down below, as well as a little instruction on how to modify it to get a little rib to it. But I basically started off with Judy's Magic Cast On at the toe, and then knit up about 7 inches. That's how long my foot usually goes, and then I did a shadow wrap heel, and now I am going up the leg here. Yeah, I've got my little radish stitch marker on there because I thought it went so cute with the colorway. The stitch marker is from Hello Lavender. I think it was like a farmer's market, theme release that she had going. So I have the little radish there. And the colorway I'm super excited about. I think it's so pretty. This is from Yarnaceous Fibers, and it was a Advent skein set that I got in December 2025. It was a Downton Abbey themed set. So I think what I got was the 50-gram fingering weight tonal sock sets. So it came with a main color that's only 50 grams instead of 100 grams. And then it had a little mini for the toe and heel. And so this colorway, it was a Downton Abbey themed, like I said. So this colorway is Violet. And then I had a little quote on there from Violet, and it was, "What is a weekend?" I love that line from the show. Maggie Smith, perfection in the show. So I just love the colorway. I love the way this is turning out. The only problem that I've had with the socks is using my double pointed needles for these. Like I said, I've been knitting socks for ages, and I used to knit with my double pointed needles. I used to knit whole sleeves with my double pointed needles, but once I discovered Magic Loop, I put away the double pointed needles and haven't picked them up since, except I cannot for the life of me find where my sock needles are for Magic Loop. For pretty much every other project, I use an interchangeable set from Chigu. For socks, I prefer to have a fixed set. So I have size 1s with, long cords, and I have a special little pouch that I put those in. Cannot find the pouch. So if I wanted to cast this on, I needed to get some needles ASAP. So I had to dig out my double pointeds. And gosh, double pointeds have humbled me. Humbled me. I had so much trouble to start off doing the Judy's Magic Cast On and the increases, and it's just been a struggle with the double pointeds. And it's great. I haven't picked up double pointed. It's good to practice a technique once in a while that you don't normally use. Oh, but I am humbled by these double pointed needles. Hopefully I will find my little pouch full of fingering weight, full of US size 1 needles rather, so that I can do the next one. I do not even care that the gauge is probably different and they'll be like kind of different sizes. I really don't care. I'm just so done using double pointeds. I want my Magic Loop back. Okay, I've got myself a little bit heated here. Those are the main active projects that I'm working on. I do have one more one that's technically a whip, but it is in the little finishing touches stages, so I'm gonna count it as a finished object. Let's go through those. My most recent finished object, I just heart this so much. I love the way it turned out. It is the As If Tee by Shay Johnson. Here is my version of it. And this is a bottom-up cropped t-shirt pattern with this really cute sweetheart illusion neckline. And it's a pretty old pattern. It was on my queue forever. I just never knit it. I think I even had the yarn for like ever too, and I never got around to knitting it. So I decided 2026 was the year that I was gonna do it. I think it was like even my New Year's Day cast on, just because I wanted to make sure I got it done in 2026, and I am so glad I did it. It is perfect for now, perfect for transitional weather. It's warm because this is worsted weight yarn here at the bottom, but it's very like of the moment now. It's got this illusion top here, which is super trendy now with everything kind of coming up sheer, and it's a nice sort of modest way to partake in the sheer trend that's popped up for 2026, and I just freaking love it. Like I said, it's an older pattern, so there is a version 1.0, which I think had limited sizes and just instructions for knitting it flat in pieces and then seaming it up, and then it has a 2.0 by now, and the 2.0 has a whole bunch of extended sizes, maybe like 9 or 10 sizes at this point, and then it has instructions for knitting flat or in the round. I chose to pretty much go with 1.0 and knit mine flat and in pieces, and I think it turned out great. I might change it up next time I knit this because of course I have to knit another one of these. I love it so much. I think I might change it up to either knit in the round or change the way I did the little sections for the sweetheart top. So when you knit it flat, if you have one color, meaning like the mohair and the main color match, you can do a faux intarsia, which the pattern tells you how to do. If you have different color top and bottom here yarns, you want to do actual intarsia, where you split up one of your skeins into, different sections so that you have different threads going. I did the faux intarsia and I really didn't like it. It didn't work out so well holding my main yarn, which was a 1-ply and kept like curling up on itself, with the delicate mohair. It just kept getting tangled up and I have to kept untangling it. At one point, I think I even had to break my strand of mohair because it was just too tangled up. So next time I would either knit in the round and carry floats across the little decrease sections here at the top, or I would actually do real intarsia and split up my balls of yarn so that so that I don't have to carry one across the entire thing. Yeah, but otherwise, I really love the way it turned out. The main color at the bottom here, the opaque portion, is Geller yarns in the Wow worsted weight base. The colorway is Alizarin. And then the illusion part is a Barocco Ariel, which is a lace weight mohair silk blend, and that is in the colorway Merlot. I think the colors match great. I think the Alizarin is a little bit brighter and The Merlot is a little bit darker, maybe a little bit more burgundy, but when it's next to skin, you really can't tell that there's any difference. I'd love to make one in another color, maybe next year, because I have so many patterns already for this year picked out, but so I just need to buy yarn and do it in another color, and maybe black, maybe navy or something like that. And maybe that one I won't do cropped, just to give it a little bit of a variety, but love, highly recommend this pattern. The next project that I finished are the Sailor Slippers by Annie Sews. This was one of these viral trending patterns at the end of last year or beginning of this year. Normally I do not knit trending patterns or viral patterns, because I'm not that fast of a knitter. I just cannot like finish with the current project and pick up a new one that fast. But this one, super bulky weight yarn, I think, or bulky weight or super bulky weight, so knits up really fast. You basically knit the little like back heel, pick up stitches for the top, go around to the bottom, and then you seam everything together at the side seams, and then add a little I-cord edging here for the ankle. Throw it in the washing machine, it felts to the current size, and bam, the pattern is done. And it would make a great gift. I definitely made these for myself, for me to wear here in my office, but I think it would make a really nice gift because it really is a nice quick knit and super customizable to lots of different shoe sizes and stuff like that. So I did mine in a size EU 38, which ends up for US women's sizes being a 7 or a 7.5. That is my regular shoe size. I've in the pattern description below and on my Ravelry project page, I have the measurements after felting for my size US women's 7, 7.5 listed there if you're interested. And the yarn that I used worsted weight yarn for this, and I held 2 strands of worsted weight together to get gauge, to make it at that kind of like bulky or super bulky weight gauge that you needed. And so the main part of the slipper, I used Letalopi that I actually got in Iceland. The lighter colorway here, this like light mauve, is rose heather, and then the darker stripe is dark wine. For the bottom, I used some Lion Brand that I got at Michael's. I used Lion Brand Wool Ease Roving Origins, and this is super important. If you go to Michael's and you just pick out regular Wool Ease, that has acrylic in it. It will not felt this way, so do not use that. You need to look for Wool Ease Roving Origins, which is 100% wool. I held two strands for that, and I was able to get gauge, and this is the colorway Goldenrod. And then the little contrast around the ankle, this I don't think it has a name. It was a limited edition like collaboration, I believe, between the knitting designer Hannah Fettig and maybe Green Mountain Spinnery, I think. And there were basically 2 colorways, and one of them was this pink. So I used that, also a worsted weight held together, to make this. I was super scared to throw these in my washing machine, and I thought they were gonna felt too fast and get too small, and the project would have been ruined, but I needn't have bother worried. Apparently my washing machine is super old. My sewing machine is too. My washing machine is super old, and it does not get that hot apparently. So it took me forever to felt these, probably like 2.5 cycles and like 3 hours between me kind of going and checking every 5 to 10 minutes to make sure that they weren't felting too fast. But I got there in the end, and I love it. I would recommend for people with hardwood floors that you do something other than just have like the plain wool here at the bottom. I think I've seen on Instagram people modifying them and like either gluing on or sewing on the hard bottom foot, which definitely helps to keep them clean when you're walking on your floors. Or the other thing that I would recommend doing is putting dots to make them a little grippy. I found on my hardwood floors, these could be a little bit slippery. So, you know, just take some hot glue gun and put some dots, or there's something called Sock Stop, you know, which comes specially formulated that you could, you know, dot on there to make them more grippy. I actually don't really wear these that much around the house. These are pretty much what I'm calling my sewing slippers. When I sew, I hate wearing a shoe to press down on the pedal. If you sew, you know what I'm talking about. So I end up usually taking out like one of my feet from my slippers and using my bare foot to press on the pedal. But these actually are now living right underneath my desk, right underneath my sewing machine. And I actually have just been wearing these, and I find it a lot easier to feel the pedal under my foot with a sock or barefoot and this slipper on. And these are keeping my feet pretty warm. My sewing room, this room that I'm in now, is on top of the garage, so the floor is usually very cold, especially in the winter time. And I found that these have been keeping my feet super comfy when I am sewing. And yeah, so I think I would definitely make another pair, or definitely give these as gifts. These would be great like gifts in December when you need like a super quick thing to give someone. And the last project that I have to share is actually a sewing one, and this is the one that's mostly finished, but not really. I actually have two versions to share. One is totally finished, one is like just there. I'll finish it like today or tomorrow or something like that. And this is the Fumeterre skirt by Deer and Joe, and it is a maxi skirt with a whole bunch of panels, and there's a view A and a view B. View A has like a button placket running down the front, and then view B has a zip fly closure, and it's got like an elasticized waistband just at the back. And it's got lots of volume and flow to it, and it is a gorgeous pattern from Deer and Joe, but I am so thrilled to be like done with it. I'm so sick of this pattern by now, and I'll tell you why here. Oops, upside down. So here is the finished version, and this is actually a wearable toile that I made. So I got this viscose floral orange fabric from Joann's way before they closed. And I wanted a like $2 a yard fabric because I had never sewn with viscose before, and I didn't, want anything that I would like mess up. So I was going to use this as my toile to practice with the viscose before I cut into my expensive fabric, but it turns out I got some matching or like coordinating yarn to go with this to make a sweater at Rhinebeck. So this fabric turned into a wearable toile. I was able to practice on it, but it took me so long to finish this skirt, and I love it. I'm so thrilled, but I want this to be done. I'm done with this pattern. I'm done with this pattern. It's taken me 3 months to get 2 of these skirts out, and I'm just done. But so the pattern, like I said, has these panels, and I learned how to do French seams for it. Let's see, there are my beautiful French seams that I learned how to do. It took me a while to figure that out. I gave myself even more work by adding a French seamed inseam pocket, which I had to learn how to do. I've got those tutorials down there that I use that I really enjoyed. And so like I said, it's got the inseam pocket to it. The toile needed a little bit of modification. This pattern is not meant for short people. For the toile, I ended up taking off 4 inches off of the pattern. And it's still a little bit too long. It just like kisses the floor even when I am wearing shoes. So for the actual project with the expensive yarn, I took off like 5 and a little bit more inches to that. So that one fits a little bit more at the ankle, like maybe a traditional maxi skirt, or I don't know. Do maxi skirts have a traditional length? It's long, I don't know. So yeah, so this project is finished. Oh, and the other thing, now that I think about it, that took me forever, besides trying to figure out how much length to take off, was my sewing machine. A little $200 nothing from Amazon. It has a automatic button foot feature, but the machine hates me, and I ended up having an absolute brawl with my machine. Not a fight, it was a brawl over the automatic buttonholes. So I'll give you an example. That's an example of this super ugly, horrible buttonhole that it did. It basically would go around and then just like stop at a random point and like create an ugly little nest at the back, which several of my buttonholes turned out that way. So I actually had to just stop doing the buttonholes with the automatic feature and learn how to do manual buttonholes. And I went through several tutorials on how to do manual buttonholes, and I've included my very favorite tutorial, the one that came out great, in the description box for this video, in case you also have a machine that acts like an a-hole and refuses to do automatic buttonholes. So that, I think, is what took me the longest with this toile, was to figure out how to do the automatic buttonholes. But it is done. It is a little messy, but it is wearable, which is what I wanted. So now on to the main skirt, which is nearly done. I'm in the process of doing the buttonholes and sewing on the buttons. I've got a few done right now, so it does close up at the waist, and then the last thing I have to do is measure the elastic for the waist and put that in and make sure it fits properly around my waist when I button it up. But yeah, otherwise this is done. And this fabric is also viscose, and it's from Core Fabrics, and it is in this, it's not a ditzy floral, but it's in this like watercolor floral in black, and I absolutely love it. It took a little bit less time to get the French seams done on this because I had practiced so much on the toile. And the only problem that I had with this was I ended up messing up the hem facing for the bottom of the skirt. So I had to rip that off, and in ripping it off, I tore a little bit of the bottom of the skirt. So I had to actually then cut it off. So this, I took off 5 inches off of the pattern, plus a little bit of like the 5/8 inch seam allowance for the hem facing, but it actually fits really nicely. This is a really nice pattern from Deer & Doe. The pattern in the description, I think it calls the pattern an intermediate pattern is what the difficulty is. I would say sewing wise, it is not intermediate. It's maybe a like adventurous beginner, particularly if you are comfortable with buttonholes or have an actual working buttonhole foot. But the pattern instructions are quite sparse. So if you are a beginner, I consider myself maybe an advanced beginner, or an adventurous beginner. But if you are a beginner, the instructions are quite sparse and it doesn't really hold your hand through a lot of it. So that is my only caution that I would give for this sweater. Or for this sewing pattern, the skirt pattern, you probably want to have at least a working knowledge of hem facings and how to do waistbands and stuff like that. But if you've done that stuff before, it is quite a breeze, even if you don't know how to do French seams like me. Yeah, so that is all the projects that I'm working on. I will be getting the rest of the holes and buttons on that skirt to finish it. And I've been doing a lot of audiobook reading while doing these sewn skirts. And I was in a little bit of a slump, but thanks to some of the audiobooks that I'm going to go through now, I am out of my slump. I am back on my goals for reading for 2026. Let's go through some of those audiobooks. I always pick a reading goal for the year, and this year I picked 50 books for 2026. And in January, I was really in danger of falling behind the 8 ball on that. I was just feeling super unmotivated by some of the books that I was listening to or reading, and it was really hard for me to get through books at the beginning of the year. So I was definitely in a little bit of a slump, and so I think it's kind of similar to knitting. Sometimes you can be in a slump, and if you just maybe try something that you've done before or like return to something that made you pretty happy, you can get out of a slump that way. So I decided to return to an author that I have loved in the past, and that is Ali Hazelwood. I decided to try her like romantasy series, which consists of Bride and Mate. And it definitely got me out of my slump as only Ali Hazelwood could. These are like spicy romantasies, lots of open door scenes. It features werewolves and vampires kind of as rivals. Bride is sort of an enemies to lover / like marriage of convenience trope, while Mate is, I don't even know there was like minimal plot in Mate. It was much more romance with like a sprinkle of fantasy in Mate. But I just love them. It was funny, I was waiting, or it's only funny to me, like it's not funny to anybody else, but I was waiting for October to read these books. I am a mood reader in the extreme. Like I need all the seasonal vibes in fall and October and November and December. So I was saving these for like spooky season in October because it features vampires and wares, but not everything needs to be seasonal. You don't need to hold back on reading things just because it would go with your seasonal vibe. That's ridiculous. That is also me, but that is ridiculous. And B, there is no need with Ali Hazelwood. She always takes these things and like gives it a really fun, like scientific twist. So there was less like magic to this and more like a scientific look about the biological makeup of werewolves and vampires, like a little sprinkling of fantasy with transitioning from a human to a were and, sucking blood and everything like that. But it was more a scientific look, so I needn't have waited till October, and I'm glad I didn't. It definitely got me out of my reading slump, and I've been picking up steam ever since. So the next book that I listened to that I absolutely loved is The Guncle by Stephen Rowley, and this was actually a book club pick in the Love and Stitches membership, which I am a part of, and my fabulous friend Jill picked out this book, and it was really surprising to me. It is a very It's a super cute contemporary fiction, and it centers around grief and family, and it was very funny, very sweet, lots of character development, and it was a bit of a slower pace, minimal plot to it, more introspective, and lots of plot development. I actually teared up at the end, which I was not expecting. Stephen Rowley, the author, reads the audiobook himself, which I thought was spectacular. His narration of the different characters, there are kids in it, so he gives one of them a lisp, and of the Guncle, it was just pitch perfect, and I really, really enjoyed that book. I was not expecting to tear up at the end, but it gave me a little bit of feels at the end. And then the last book that I literally just finished days ago was one that I've been holding on to. I guess hold on to a lot. This is my problem. This is why I get into reading slumps. I hold on to books for specific reasons. This one I was holding on to because the follow-up book is coming out soon in the month of April, but the book that I listened to was Shield of Sparrows by Devney Perry. Like I said, I was waiting on that one because I suspected there was going to be a little bit of a cliffhanger on there, and was there. There was definitely a cliffhanger, and I'm super glad that the next book, Rites of the Starling, is coming out soon. This is a romantasy, an epic journey. It's got warriors and princesses and monsters, and there's great plot development. The book really moves. It's got a really kick-ass heroine. It's billed as enemies to lovers, but it wasn't enough enemies to lovers for me, but it was definitely slow burn, mild to moderate spice, like a couple of open door scenes at the end. But I just thought the plot was spectacular. I thought the ending, the setup to the next book was perfect. And this was probably one of my favorite romantasies that I've read in a really long time. So I'm really looking forward to the next book. I'm sure I will prattle on about that in the next video. So I guess we all have that to look forward to. No one's looking forward to it but me. But if you've been with me this long, thank you so much for watching. I'll see you on the next one.